Welcome everybody, both members and guests. As John said, we should have been in Glasgow and we thought we were the warm-up act to COP26. So when we couldn't meet this year, we put ourselves back a year. And then a few weeks later, COP26 decided to put themselves back a year in Glasgow. So we think they're actually probably running on our coattails rather than the other way around. But I do miss personally not being able to get together with everybody. I know we can have more people here today, but for me, it's not the same as the networking, the ideas, and frankly, the company I enjoy so much of working with everybody together here. But this is our opportunity to report and account to you on the work we've done during the past 15 months or so, and to discuss it and to shape it for the future. But I'd like to start off with a very big thank you to all our members of staff who've had an extremely difficult 6 or 7 months. I think it's been quite remarkable what they've managed to do in providing a seamless service to everybody that really haven't really noticed the difference. But I'm well aware that at home they might have small children, they've been doing home teaching, might be sharing their home with another home worker now, their partner. It's really not been easy, and some of the hours worked have been at beginning and ends of days to accommodate the children. It's also difficult for us in terms of work sharing and training, and obviously recruitment too. But I'd like to welcome two members of staff this year, and they're identifiable on the picture because they both wear hats. It's a requirement that all new members of staff have to wear a hat. So there is Tom in Scotland working on project development there, and Tracy in Kendal, who works on our marketing side. So welcome to them both, and thank you. And we are recruiting as well at the moment some account staff to be based in the Barrow office, or home working and Barrow, and a replacement for Laura, who's our Southeast project manager, who left to return to Spain a couple of weeks ago. Go to the next slide, Annette, please. And just a quick reminder that we are a cooperative of 28 community energy organisations who cooperate together and share what we all do, because it makes us much more effective. And one of the key things we do share is the values of what we do, both the mission, but also the values, the way we do it. And you might say, 28? Well, where does this come from? Because last year it was 25. So, Annette, next slide. Welcome to Och Robert, Energize South, and yes, the mystery announcement. So we go on to the next slide, which is Och Robert, the Och Robert Community Energy, which bought a stake in this substantial folk wind farm about a year, well, late last year. And again, many thanks to Folk for being a very special partner, and also special within the UK in their desire and active delivery of community participation in their wind farms. We go on to the next slide, please, which is Energize South. Unusual because Energize South is not only a generating cooperative, but is utterly closely linked with Energize Sussex Coast, which works in fuel poverty alleviation and advice, and actually a whole host of other energy related matters in Hastings and the adjoining areas. So there's two of the directors, an incredibly active group. We're delighted to have them join Energy4All. Next slide. And here you see some of the energy advice work they're doing. So they go from show to show. They've got mobile, a van which they can take around, contact as many people as possible to help on energy. And yes, this is the mystery one. Welcome to Glasgow Community Energy. Ellie, who's on the call today, contacted us about 4 years ago, and the sheer grit and determination that group has shown to get their project going, I think, is a lesson to us all. And the great news is that last weekend, their first solar project was half constructed, but is there, with the other half to be built tomorrow and on Sunday. So well done, Glasgow, and welcome. And the Community Energy Group is now ready for COP26 too. If we could just go on. The Glasgow group is a youthful one. They won't remember this advert from the 1970s, I think. But just like Heineken meets parts of the body that other beers don't, I think community energy shows that it meets part of the world, if you like, that other organisations can't. And Glasgow is a great example of that, because it's only a community group that could have pulled it off, frankly. The Glasgow City Council were determined, shall we say, that they weren't going to use the buildings themselves, but nor was anybody else. And it was that group that managed to overcome those huge obstacles over a process of several years. So if we can move on. We have this policy within Energy4All. Energy4All members join together through Energy4All to help make these new projects happen. And it's all the existing members who have enabled our work on behalf of Ockrobert and Energy South and Glasgow. And those three new members will now be joining Energy4All so that they too can help make other groups' projects happen in the future. And it's this round circle where we cooperate together to do more, and the people who groups come into existence supported by existing members, and then join that to support new members develop as well. Next slide, Annette. So this is where we now are. The slide is already out of date because because Glasgow joined, but it gives you a quick potted summary of where Energy4All is, and where we not only obviously do we have the 28 community energy organisations, but where we are fortunate, I think, is we do have a professional staff with a lot of collective skill and experience. But then really working in the community energy groups themselves, we have several hundred volunteers who do a colossal amount. And it's the combination which achieves so much. We've got capital, and we find it very easy to raise capital from members of the public too, because we've got a good reputation. Our reputation is that of delivery and being utterly ethical. But we're also very fortunate with our partners, many of whom are on the call today. And they vary from engineers and contractors who like what we do and trust us with their clients, their financial partners. There's community energy, the trade body, Community Energy England, and the regional groups. And say people on the financial side. So there's a whole raft of people we work with, which manages to deliver what we are able to do. Go to the next slide. And on this, we can't do everything, and John will cover this slightly more in the second half. We have to be selective in what we take on. We like, if possible, to add 2 or 3 new groups a year, either projects developed by us or by existing groups coming to join us. But in selecting what we can take on, we consider scale and innovation and the strength of the team working with us. Are they going to be there long term? And then at the end of the day also, particularly, do they share the values, and particularly the values we have as a cooperative of mutual support. But to try to enable more groups to work with us, we're also been working with local partnerships. Ealing Transition and Berkhamsted Transition were probably the first, which worked with Schools Energy Co-op to deliver schools locally. Salisbury Community Energy has done the same thing very, very successfully this year. And Chiltern Hills is now looking at a partnership with Reading, and we think this is an interesting way to develop in the energy market that it is today, where it's much more difficult for small groups to be viable on a standalone basis if, for instance, they've only got a handful of projects. Go on to the next slide. And the next one, because that was the office happier days. Shall we, Annette, can we just move on? we haven't stood still. I mean, not only have we had the office to do all the day-to-day work, of managing the co-ops, selling the electricity, organising the maintenance of the systems, collecting the bills, preparing accounts, and so forth. And this year in particular, a lot of power purchase agreement renewals. With 28 co-ops, we're running an AGM more frequently than once a fortnight. Interest payments are going out more frequently than once a fortnight. There's over 180, I think, solar roofs, which we now have to run, mainly on schools. So this isn't easy, but on top of that, we have done a number of developments during the year. Something that first one driven, obviously home working and the extra security measures we had to take with that. But I'd mention also Cooperative Energy, who've been a long-term partner of ours, stopped trading at the end of March and transferred their business to Octopus. And it hasn't been a smooth transfer, and it's led to an enormous amount of work for the staff. On top of which, Ofgem has gone through one of its periodic implosions. It's not easy or competent at the best of times, but they really can't cope at the moment with new feed-in tariff applications, or haven't been able to really for the last year. So again, that leads to a lot of extra work. And then, of course, we've had to move on to all the online video conferencing and AGMs and so forth. So there's been a lot of extra work and developments and progress too in this period. Next slide. Share offers have been a great success in the year. I mean, that's the list. You've seen mention of Energize South and Och Robert already. And I just want to go on now to examples of the work funded. We've raised about £9 million in the past year, and it really has come in very, very easily. It hasn't been particularly affected by the COVID lockdowns at all. We try whenever possible to raise the money local to the project, to get members local to the project. That at times has been more difficult this time, without less access to public meetings, but it's still worked pretty well, and it's been a great year for successful share offers. So the next slide, and this of course is the flagship of our year and probably of our history. The 5 2.3 megawatt turbines of Meanmore and High Winds, which are now refinanced, combined and wholly owned by High Winds Community Energy. It's a demonstration of community energy operating at scale, a great success. I think it powers getting on for half the households in Barrow, just to give you an idea of the power of these 5 turbines. I'm very, very delighted with that. Then Highland Energy has produced 2 more hydro schemes during the year. This is just a picture of one of them. And then if we can go on to the next one, our most extraordinary, not the biggest, but the most extraordinary project of the year has been at Salisbury Cathedral. And here we have Bishop Nick in Bishop's purple and high-vis jacket inspecting the installation of the solar panels on the cloisters of the cathedral. So next slide. And this is what it now is, 36 kilowatts, powering the cathedral, which includes also a shop and cafe in the cloisters. It uses a lot of power, the cathedral. And the panels themselves are invisible unless you actually go onto the roof of the nave or climb the spire. And I just sort of add, normally our members are individuals, but the fundraising linked into Schools Energy Co-op to fund Salisbury Cathedral and others led to both the cathedral itself becoming a member of Schools Energy Co-op, and also an organisation called Equilibrium, which is individuals offsetting their travel and other carbon costs of going to festivals and or performing at festivals. And so that represented an investment of modest amounts collected together of several thousand people. They've been successes, but it's you don't really see the failures. We do, because we spend hours working on projects sometimes which just don't go anywhere. And I just wanted to sort of remind everybody, we do an awful lot of frog kissing, and only a handful of them turn into princes. So we've worked on some very big warehouse roofs this year with no joy. We've did a lot of work in Ireland. We got some consultancy work for it, but not the projects we'd hoped. We've investigated solar farms which are put up for sale, and we just couldn't find them, couldn't make them viable in our view. So these other things are going on in the background, and which generally you won't hear about. Annette, but overall, our co-ops have been doing a huge amount of development work themselves, which has been also a great success. Approximately half our co-ops have been building something in the last year, and that's obviously taken up a lot of time, but it's also very, very satisfying too that our members are continuing to develop in this way as well as other ways too. I just wanted to highlight one of the co-ops, really because it's of the context when Eric talks later this morning, which is Springbok, where we can just move on, Annette. Springbok is our wood heat co-op, and it was built a few years ago, district heating system in a hamlet and with a care home in on the Surrey-Sussex borders, a very wooded area. And the aim is always to move to supplying wood from the immediate area rather than buying it in from wood fuel suppliers. So this is the wood which was being felled for use in the co-op, and what was holding it up was the lack of a suitable barn to store it in. So if we get the next slide, the development here was the construction of this very substantial barn. This is a big trailer, just to give you an idea of how big the barn is. It's now full of wood chip, got a year's supply in there. Very, very satisfying indeed. And the next slide just shows this is wood chip being tipped into the hopper next to the boiler house here. And this was a project very much driven by Kathy, the Springbok director, sort of showing the great benefit we have of working, with this mixture of very skilled and dedicated volunteers as well as the paid staff to achieve so much more than we could just all do on our own. So thank you, Kathy, for doing that. And then just a few other points, because it is more than new projects, as I mentioned, and maintenance can be a substantial task. And again, there's another Kathy I would particularly like to mention here, because she's done a huge amount of work at West Solent in dealing with the replacement of the transformer there, and seems to get the West Solent farm working properly again. So thank you, Kathy, and well done on that. We've had various sort of financial and constitutional restructurings going on. I mentioned partnerships as a way of developing. Partnerships also developing what perhaps have always been there with local authorities too. So there's a good relationship with Edinburgh, with Reading, with the Ealing. Harrow has now, when they're doing new developments, have been contacting us to say, how about putting some solar on our new development? So that's great when we can get that relationship going. And with these partnerships, we're managing to preserve independence and local identity, but also get the benefits of scale and availability of expertise, which is so necessary. But we also have this, we call it Beyond Generation, because as a community energy group, we do more than generate. It is about the community side and the community ownership as well. And so right from the beginning with Baywind and Westmill, they've been sort of setting up educational programs, support of other co-ops, active engagement in the community. There's a lot of good practice being done within all the co-ops, and we're quite keen to draw us together more effectively than we have done in the past, and to share best practice and to work on the grant giving side. And John will talk about this more in the second half as a sort of a project we have in mind. We would have started it by now if it hadn't been for the COVID lockdown, but it's very much a follow-up on what Natasha was talking about last year to the conference then. So that, I think, is my summary of the year, and thank you all very much indeed for your support and engagement and participation in Energy4All and our member co-ops.
Thank you, Mike. Excellent, thank you. There are some questions that have come in while you've been speaking there, and one relates to the trees at Springboks. Maybe I jump straight back in about replanting of trees.
John, it's Kathy. I'm answering that.
Okay, fine, thank you. Yeah. Do you want to do that now then, Kathy? Do you want to answer?
Well, I was going to type it.
Oh, I see your answer. Just give us a couple of words on that.
Okay, well, most of the wood in the piles represents the wood we had to take out just to create the tracks or rides, as they're known in the trade, to get the vehicles through. And so obviously we don't replant those. But the one block where we have actually taken the hazel coppice out and some of the less valuable oak has been replanted. So I say so. It's not straightforward. We replant where it's appropriate, and we put 600 trees in this year. So this isn't actually, for various reasons, and don't want to go on too long. This isn't the co-op. This is actually the Mike and I as the owners of the woodland.
Yeah, as fuel suppliers essentially.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll keep that short then, if that's okay, Kathy. And Mike, we just had a question on who the funders are, and I think you pretty much said it is individuals who fund. I think that came in as you were talking about the share offers there, the substantial sums, but they are individual investors plus one or two other investors. Do you want to comment on that? Who are the funders, mainly individuals or corporate or institutional money?
Overwhelmingly individuals. I would say, we don't seek corporate money at all. In some of the projects, such as the schools projects, all the schools become members of the co-op, and occasionally they do fundraising work themselves to participate, or some of them, if it's a new roof, they might have some money left over which they put into the co-op. But Equilibrium, which is, as I say, it's got several thousand individuals doing their own carbon offsetting. It's just that they have done it collectively through one organisation.
Can I also say as well, we've got several co-ops help these young new co-ops coming through, because one of the biggest things you face is the VAT. How do you cover the VAT? You can claim it back, but you need to pay it first. So a lot of our big co-ops have been lending short term to get over that issue, and that's worked out really well. We're really thankful, you know, for like Baywind and, well, a lot of the Scottish co-ops as well have helped out on that occasion.
And then there's one institutional funder, an ethical funder called Thrive, who we have worked with and talked to on other projects too. For instance, they were the biggest original funder on the purchase of Mean Moor, and we have the last share issue and bond issue has repaid them.
Yeah, and also bankers. There's not many bankers out there, not many banks willing to lend. We've had small organisations like Pure Leapfrog and Triodos. Triodos have been extremely helpful, especially on high winds and Mean Moor, so we'd like to thank them as well.
So just to keep us on time, Mike, we have had some pre-submitted questions. One from Tony Hoskins around the Schools Energy Co-op financial model. Do you want to, with 30 seconds, can I put that to you?
Yes, go on, John.
So the question is about, I understand the Schools Energy business model post-FIT is a price lower than the site's price and then RPI linked year after year. Is that the, do you want to just comment very briefly, and we can perhaps pick up a conversation with Tony in more detail outside the meeting?
Yes, the way the schools projects work is that the power which gets generated from the solar panels on their roof is sold to the schools at a price, and the price reflects the cost of the construction of the system, the amount we expect the school to use, and the amount that gets generated. The model historically with the feed-in tariff was it was a 20-year model, and the income was partly the feed-in tariff and partly, but mainly in recent years, the sale of electricity to schools. And without the feed-in tariff, we have extended the length of the contract from 20 to 25 years as our standard contract. And the price which schools pay is typically, I mean, it's somewhere between 9 pence a kilowatt hour and about 10.5 pence a kilowatt hour, but inflation linked, and it needs to be inflation linked, at least for a decent chunk of it, to cover the variable costs such as maintenance and administration, which the co-op has. And obviously some schools are understandably uncomfortable about entering into very long-term contracts, but most aren't, and they have a fairly short-term way of looking at things, which is if a 30% saving for them now is something they're quite keen to have, as well as the environmental benefits.